Hello, and welcome back to week 3 of our current scene coloring breakdown series here on the Sweet November Stamps YouTube channel. I am Amy, and I am co-owner and illustrator for Sweet November Stamps. We are in the thick of Mermay, and we've created this sea trench ocean floor scene that we're working on. We got our mermaid done in the last 2 videos. She is part of the Mermy Emotions clear set that just released this past weekend at Sweet November Stamps. And the background is from the new background builder called The Deep. And today we are going to start working on that background, and we are going to start with our ocean floor. So let's get to it. I'm going to start with some we'll go C3. Because I'm imagining, since we're down in the deep trenches where those thermal vents can be found, I don't want this to be as sandy of a sea floor as I usually create within my scenes. We're going to do something a little bit different. There will be some sand, but I want to see some kind of stone as well. So I'm going to start at the base of these thermal vents. And I'm just going to use the C3. I'm using that side of that nib so I get a nice wide, soft path of color. To lay in some gray. And I chose the C's, the cool grays, because we're working with a lot of cool colors within this scene with the blues and the purples. So it's going to just keep everything consistent tonal wise. Okay. And I'm going to continue it all the way back here. And you'll see it, I'm leaving little gaps, and that's where I'm going to have just kind of a little skiff of sand kind of running through the scene, but not a lot. Just kind of, so it's like really light, really filtered down, but mostly rocky bottom down here. And I started with a fairly light, C3 is not a very strong gray. And we're going to go even lighter back here in a moment. I'm going to go down to a C1 as our seafloor kind of peters off into the distance back here. I'm going to help achieve that look by going with a lighter shade of gray. And I think, about mid-torso on her will be good for taking our seafloor back to. Use it to kind of merge here in the mid-ground with that C3, soften it a bit there. Okay, all right. Now I'm going to kind of start mapping in my sand. And I think I'll do that with some E41. Again, using the side of that marker. And I'm just sweeping it very softly, very light pressure into those areas where I left it kind of white. And I'm letting it merge right into that gray so that we get a nice smooth transition between the two. And I'm really not going to go much further back than maybe just behind this little guy here. The rest, it will get filled in with blue tones as the water starts coming into play. I want to keep the kind of sand that we actually see the color of the sand right up front here close to us. That's going to help pull this part of the scene forward and push the rest of it back. So let's keep building up that sand. Come in with some E42, still using that side of the marker with that wide sweeping light-handed brush stroke. Just basically using my elbow. You can see my wrist is pretty locked, and I'm just using so I get a long range of smooth motion by swinging my hand from the elbow forward. And that's what's going to give me those long, kind of broad brush strokes. As we work closer to our characters, I do got to come in and get a little bit more detailed, pull up on my marker a bit because I don't want to start getting sand into our mermaid. But when you've got a wide open space like that, you can really take advantage of the range of motion you can get by, holding your marker further back, letting your, and not have as tight of a brush stroke as you'd get with either using your fingers or your wrist. If you move even further back with like your elbow, that's when you can really take advantage and get those nice wide, and they make it really easy to blend out because you've got a much lighter hand just naturally because you're holding it so much further back, and there's very little pressure on the front of the marker that way. We'll come in with a little bit of E43. Same sweeping color. Just filling this in a little bit more. Really coming into that gray down front here. Get a little bit more precise around our mermaid. So I can clean up where those stop-start kind of brush strokes are. We don't want that. Okay. Back to the 41. And because I'm working, fairly quickly through my colors, they're staying rather saturated, making it much easier for me to blend the colors together, because that wet ink is going to do half that work all on its own, just kind of naturally letting those little particles of ink color spread out on the wet cardstock. I think I'm even going to bring in some E40. Just really blend those all out. Give us a soft, kind of almost watercolor-like effect, where it's that kind of hazy hint of color down there. Okay. Now I'm going to build up my grays a little bit more. I'm going to come in with some C5 and just reinforce directly beneath our thermal vents here. And I'm going to do this one at a time. C4. And that C3 we started with. C1, right, merging right into our sandy earth tones, like so. Okay. I'm going to repeat that process over here under this vent. And our C1 again. Okay. Now on that farther vent, which you might notice, all of the mermaid and these first two vents I stamped up using Memento Tuxedo black ink. I used the London fog on this third vent that I wanted to push further into the background. Just makes it slightly lighter, which gives it the illusion of being further away within the space that we're creating. So I'm not going to go with the C5 under it for its kind of shading. I'm going to just do a little bit of C4. And then back to that C3. And then the C1 again. All right. Now, we're not quite done yet. Got a little bit more detail to add in there. And I'm going to do that, I think with the C4. And I'm going to kind of hint at kind of the stones that make up the sea floor. And just by sketching in, just like loose little lines here and there, that kind of create a stone floor pattern. And they'll kind of peter out as the sand covers them in certain areas. But out anywhere where it's really gray, I'm just going to add in some lines that hint at kind of a patchwork of stones. Just keeping it really subtle. Just hinting at, you know, the cracks and crevices. Letting them, you know, peter out as we get into that sandy area. So it looks like the sand's covering them up. And then picking them back up wherever we get out into that gray. We'll hint at it back here as well. And I think as I get back here, I want to swap over to the C3. Oh, I do want to get a little bit in here. There we go. So now, like I said, getting it lighter as we go back, we're going to do the same. We're still going to add some little cracks and crevices in, but slightly lighter with that C3. And I'm going to make them less distinct and not worry about, you know, creating such a solid pattern with them, because I'm going to have a lot of that watercolor coming when we start coloring in the water. It's going to come down and cover a lot of this or merge with it a bit, you know, so a lot of these lines are going to get kind of hazed out and a little lost, which we want, especially as we go further back into the distance of our scene. But I just want the hints of some of those lines still showing up back here. So they don't, you know, you don't need anything to be perfect. You're just kind of loosely sketching lines and always knowing that, you know, eventually they're going to get kind of merge with a whole nother part of your scene. So just like that's good. Okay. And then one last little detail for our sand down here. I'm going to come in with some E44. And I just always like to add a little bit of kind of the grains of sand here and there, just as a little extra detail. So I'm just going to stipple, just like we did on her tail last week. Just loose little clusters of dots. Okay, that's looking pretty good. All right, we did it. We got our sea floor all colored in, ready for the rest of the scene. So I think we'll call it good for this week. There you can see the details that we added in with the sand and the stony floor. And next week we'll be working on our bubble vents. And until then, stay crafty, my friends. Bye.